Evolution takes time. Some evolutions are big, some are small. Either way, the one key component to the consistent thread of all evolution is the reinvention of identity. If you want a better life than the one you currently have, you need to reinvent your perception of who you are and what you can accomplish. Losing a massive amount of body fat and keeping it off can only happen if you become a different person. But that doesn't mean that life becomes easy. You see, the gravity of your old identity, the pull of the past, can still be strong. Today's guest is inspiring for many reasons. Not only did she lose a massive amount of weight, reinvent herself, and become even more of a badass in boxing, but she still battles daily with getting rid of the old self. Get ready for some real raw truths to come flying in your face with today's episode. Welcome to the Evolve Podcast. Evolve your body, evolve your mind, evolve your soul, and evolve your tribe. And now it's time to disrupt. And with that, folks, we want to welcome you to another episode of the Evolve Podcast. Joining me in his Everlast shirt is the most interesting man that I know, W. Miles Riley. Welcome, Miles.
Hey, Steve. Thank you. Yeah, glad to be here tonight with our special kick-ass guest.
She is pretty badass. We are really fortunate to be joined by Kim Hartm. Now, for those of you who don't know Kim, you're going to get to know her a little bit more, but she was a co-host for us on one or two of our episodes. And to introduce you to Kim, Kim says, I'm a wife to an amazing husband, a mom of 3 active boys, a writer, and a boxer. I've struggled with my weight my entire life, reaching a high point of 320 pounds at my highest. Then I discovered my passion for boxing 8 years ago and my passion for total fitness about 3 years ago. I'm still working on finding my passion for nutrition, but I'm finding what works for me and trying to take it one day at a time. Kim Hartman, welcome to the Evolve Podcast, or I should say, welcome back.
Thank you so much.
I think the last time we had you, there was just this great back and forth between you and Miles. It was that was as entertaining as our guest.
I love my Miles, you know.
I think the title of your next book should be "I Will Knock You the Fuck Out." and it's like it's even though the title is pretty brutal, it's really like this philosophical inquiry into the dynamics of change.
Yeah.
But the title is "I Will Knock You the Fuck Out."
Exactly.
I love that. And Kim is a great writer. Like, so I could see you writing that book, Kim. There you go. You got your title. Now it's just going backwards.
I thought about writing a book about just sort of the journey, because it's a continuing journey. It's not a you get there and you're done, you know. And I think a lot of people think that.
Well, I think especially in today's day and age where you got so much social media, people look at before and after pictures and they think that the after is an end, right? But however old we are, we still have a lot more life to live, and that after picture is not the end. We are living life. Yeah. There is no snapshot that becomes the end. And I think that's a big part of what we want to tap into this time around, is talking about some of those challenges. But before we get into that, tell our listeners a little bit about yourself. Walk us through who is Kim right now?
Who I am right now. Well, like my bio said, I at one point was 320 pounds. And, I feel like I was always the person I am now. I'm Kim 2.0, but I grew up in a family of 6 kids, and I had a really beautiful older sister, and I was always the funny one because I grew up, my older sister was the beautiful one and I was the funny one. And it's funny, I look back at pictures now, and I always considered myself overweight, but I look back at pictures of me as a younger girl, and I really wasn't like overweight. I grew fast, and I was taller than a lot of kids at a young age. But I always considered myself overweight. And by the time I was 30, probably 30, 31, I was 320 pounds. And, you know, I always joked around with people that I had like reverse anorexia, because I would look at, I felt like I was normal size. Like I didn't feel like I would see myself as perfectly fine. And then I would see pictures of myself and be like, is that me? Like, I don't see myself that way. And my mom would like, I'd see a picture, I'd be like, oh, I hate that picture. My mom would be like, why? That's what you look like. And it just, it didn't compute in my head. And I actually had gastric bypass surgery when I was 30. And no, actually when I was 40, sorry, getting my numbers mixed up. When I was 40, and I got pregnant with my son several months after that. I lost, let's see, 130 pounds after that surgery.
Wow.
And that was the first time I'd ever gotten pregnant. And I'd been married for 10 years at that point. So I was able to have my son, and just kind of started putting weight back on. So I was like, during that time, I was exercising, and I actually had found boxing. I just decided one day that boxing was something I wanted to try. And so I think I actually looked at Yellow Pages, believe it or not. I think I went online and looked at Yellow Pages and found a boxing studio that was near me, and just went in by myself and tried it out and started going to boxing. And I really liked it, but didn't really do a lot with changing how I was eating or anything. And so I did put back on quite a few pounds after that surgery. But it was probably 3 or 4 years ago. I went through a separation and eventually a divorce, and I just felt like that I needed to really make some changes in my life. And I started really like getting into boxing and taking it more seriously. And I decided that I wanted to change the way I was eating, and I just sort of found something that worked for me. I was looking at my macros, and I didn't do anything extreme, but I just found something that I could like implement in my life that would work for my life at the time, and started really keeping track of what I was eating. I think I used my Fitness Pal, and I was working out. You know, I was going 3 times a week, and then 4 times a week, and then 5 times a week. And then I made a goal for myself that I wanted to actually do a fight. And so that's kind of, and the weight just started coming off, and eventually I lost 90 pounds.
Wow.
Just sort of on my own doing that. And there was just something in me that just really like clicked at that time. That just, I got this passion for working out, for fitness, that I had never before had in my life. Before, working out and fitness had been a chore. It had been something that I knew I should do, but I never really wanted to do. And at that point, it really clicked in my head, and I became this person who would do anything to get my workout in. And eventually I became the person who was going to 5:30 a.m. workouts, which I was never, ever, ever a morning person. Never a morning person. But I had to move my schedules because of my kids and because I was a single mom. And so I started doing these things that, because I loved working out so much, I was making these changes in my life to accommodate that. And it was just a complete turnaround for me that I had never experienced. And because of that, I started seeing changes in my body. I started developing muscles that I'd never seen before. And this was, in my 40s, like arm muscles and shoulder muscles and back muscles. And I was like, wow, this is so cool, and it all sort of like culminated into me like actually reaching this goal of having my first fight. It was in June of 2021, where I actually got into a boxing ring and participated in a bout in a fight. It was an exhibition fight, but we did 3 rounds that were a minute each, and it was awesome, totally awesome. And I've never worked so hard for anything in my life, never.
It's really cool.
What's the first time you hit and you had that change of state? What a lot of people who've never boxed before, what they don't understand is the minute you hit somebody with a really good shot, your state changes. And it brings up this kind of rawness in you.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things when I was training boxers at Lifetime, oftentimes women would say, who had never hit anybody, and they would take a good shot and they would look at me with that wild look in their eyes, like, I have never experienced anything like that, hitting somebody and I don't have to apologize and I can hit as hard as I want. And that sensation, when was that first sensation for you?
I have had so many dreams where I needed to hit somebody and I couldn't. Like I needed to punch somebody and I actually couldn't do it. But I remember the first time I sparred and I was really nervous and I took a shot to the head, and it was probably more to the face, kind of to the side. And I remember coming back from that and I was like, oh my gosh, that was awesome. And I was like, okay, I can do this, and this side of me that I never knew existed came out where I was getting hit and I was like, oh, hell no. And I would just become this like super aggressive, like, that's not happening. Just, person that I didn't know existed. I didn't know I could be that way. And it was like amazing. It was amazing. And I didn't win my fight, but it didn't matter because the whole experience was so incredible. Like, that I had set this goal. I've never been a goal setter. And that I had accomplished it and I had done this thing. But after that, I really kind of like got lost in the desert, so to speak. Like
So before we go to the getting lost point, I want to go back just a little bit, because there's something interesting I think about your story, Kim, that it reminds me of, in episode 53 we had interviewed Dan Cadmus, and he had lost, I can't remember how much it was, well over 100 pounds, but there's some similarities here where he just little by little things were starting to change, right? He didn't necessarily have a goal, and I think like you, one thing changed, then he got into something else, and then little by little something happened, and then he just says, oh, well, I'm going to now set a goal. And so he did, but he did that after he had lost a significant amount of weight just through some lifestyle changes. You'd been boxing, and then you said, oh, I'm going to set a goal, I'm going to go fight somebody. But there's an interesting component to that where you've made a few of these lifestyle changes without actually setting the goal to say, I'm going to get to this level. I want to go back to your heaviest weight. What do you think led you to get to that point? When you were at 320 pounds, what was happening internally, externally that led you to that point?
I was incredibly unhappy in my life. I was in an unfulfilling marriage, an unfulfilling relationship. I felt very lonely in. And that just, I felt very unloved. We were just, it was just not a good, I can't point to it and say, oh, this was wrong or this was happening. It was just not a good marriage. And I am definitely a person who eats my feelings. And so anytime anything happened, we would have an argument, or which was all the time, I would just turn to food. You know, if I felt lonely, if I felt frustrated, if I felt angry, if I, you know, I would just turn to food. Food was my number one comfort during that whole time. And I think when I went into my marriage, I was probably, when I got married, I was probably already, you know, I was well over 200 pounds. But I would say from the time we got married up until that point, I gained 80 to 100 pounds. So you don't need to be in here. Sorry. My cat wants to be part of this.
Nice.
Oh.
We'll interview the cat too.
So it was just really a matter of just being, you know, it's hard because I had, you know, I had a really good job. I had some really good friends, but I just felt out of control in so many areas of my life. You know, I didn't have what I felt like was a fulfilling relationship at home, a fulfilling, loving relationship at home. I, for several years, wasn't able to have kids. So there were just a lot of things like that going on that I think just led me I just turned directly to food to deal with that.
So it sounds like food was really, was there to comfort all the emotions, not just sadness, but loneliness and being angry, upset, frustration.
Yeah,
that food became the habit there. What were some of the physical challenges you were dealing with at that weight?
You know, just not being able to, like, just moving becomes more difficult, just physically getting around. I always felt like I was trying to be smaller than I was. Like, I just, everywhere I went, I just wanted to be smaller and not seen. I hated flying because it terrified me about, you know, am I going to fit in the seat? I knew I was going to need a seatbelt extension. It was embarrassing to ask. Am I going to get stuck in the middle seat? There's just all these anxieties around being out in public, you know, going to amusement parks or anything where you're going to have to fit in something was always scary and anxiety inducing. It just, like, not being able to do things. I did have, you know, we adopted our older son, and not being able to, like, actively play with him and stuff. You know, when you're carrying around that much weight, it's just, I mean, just physically moving is difficult, you know?
Yeah.
And I'm a pretty strong person, and I feel like I carried my weight all pretty evenly, but for me, I think a lot of it was just anxiety about going places, doing things. Am I going to fit? And then just that feeling of always trying to make myself smaller around people, you know?
You're not the first person that's told me that, like, as over the years.
I have too much space, you know?
Yeah.
So just trying to make yourself smaller all the time, so you weren't inconveniencing anyone.
Let me ask you this. One of the things that I found over the years in coaching people, when they were at their heaviest weight, they would tell me, and I'm not sure if this is the case with you, or not. You mentioned eating the feelings and going towards, the leaning into the pain by eating. What several of my clients over the years had told me was that the eating led to the excess of body fat, right? Which led to more separation between them and another person. When you think about a lot of the feelings that we have, a lot of the emotions that are painful, so loneliness, sadness, maybe unrequited love, those types of things. When we eat and then gain the body fat, we create more physical space in addition to emotional space. And so the physical becomes a manifestation of what's happening internally. And what many of my clients told me is as they started to lose the body fat, it started to shed that barrier physically and emotionally between them and another person. Did you experience the same thing with the relationships in your life?
That's an interesting question. Can we get personal here?
Yeah. So it's your story.
So there's a lot going on with me when I left my marriage. So I started losing weight. I was, it had been 15 years of feeling like you were in this sort of loveless relationship. Mm-hmm. I had never, I grew up in the LDS church, and, I got married at, I was almost 31 when I got married. And when I got married, I was still a virgin. Like, I was very strict LDS. So I had never really had my, I don't know, my wild 20s or whatever people do. And so I was out of a marriage. I was in my 40s. I was losing weight. And I was like, I kind of want to see what life is like a little bit. Mm. And I'm still trying to decide if that was smart or not. Because
it's a good way to put it. And maybe it doesn't matter whether it was smart or not. It was experience, right? Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
But I went maybe a little bit crazy, maybe not. I don't know. But I was trying to, how do I put this? I was trying to find love and acceptance based on the fact that I was losing weight and not on who I was as a person. So I was like, man, I'm losing weight. I'm looking pretty good. Like, somebody should love me now, And it wasn't about, I'm actually a really good person and I have a lot going for me and I'm smart and I'm funny. And so the fact that I had spent so much of my life, especially those last 15 years, feeling so icky about myself, and carrying this extra burden, emotionally and physically, in the form of weight. And then you're letting that go. You kind of start looking for validation in the wrong ways, I guess. And that's initially what I was doing. I was looking for physical validation, I'm looking pretty good, aren't I? But I really wanted to find love, but I was looking for physical validation versus love. And that was because I had this, Steve, you and I talked about this a lot, Steve, because I was still trying to, I still was seeing myself as that fat girl, but I wanted other people to tell me, no, you look good, And so it's really hard to make that connection between your body and your mind when you make those changes. It takes a long time to see yourself in a new way.
Yep.
For
Isn't
everything
it
to kind of catch up.
Yeah.
Isn't it interesting that no matter how you look, I don't care if you are the most stunning person on the planet or the worst looking person on the planet, when you reduce yourself to what I call thingness, and the thing is what you're using to capture whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So like if you're beautiful, you're using beauty to fill a hole in you.
Mm-hmm.
And whatever happens is you've turned it's almost like we have this capacity as human beings to objectify ourselves. And then in turning ourselves into objects, use the object to gain the type of love or acceptance. And acceptance is really about being in existence. You know, I'm here as a human being and that's it. But all the other stuff that I add on to myself to use to attract the right type of person, the right love, the right self-esteem and all that stuff, it doesn't work because you see it used across like that's beauty scale from the most beautiful to the person who we think is the most ugly. At some point we're using this thing and we're not using our existence.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think I had in my head at the time, like, if I were more beautiful or if I were thin, maybe this marriage would have been better, but that wasn't it at all. Like, the fact is, my ex-husband and I, like, and this is way too much to get into, but it never would have worked. Like, they're just
not compatible. Is what it sounded like.
Yeah, we weren't compatible, and the love wasn't there. Like, the love wasn't there, and it wasn't because I was overweight, you know.
Yeah.
It had nothing to do with that. He was damaged in his own way, I was damaged in my own special way, and it just never was going to work no matter who I looked like, you know. And so I had to like really learn that about myself and like learn that, okay, I like to be this way because I like to be strong and I like to be healthy and I like the way I feel, but I can't, like, that can't be just who I am. Like, I can't be all about that because I'm so much more than that. Like, that's my shell, but I can't use that to try and find like love, you know, because I'm so much more than that.
Right. It doesn't translate to a relationship.
Mm-mm. No.
Yeah. Any of the things that you have, like, again, I get back to that term thingness.
Yeah.
Anything you have does not translate to a relationship, whether you have a better car or, you know, I can't wait till I get my 6-pack because when I get my 6-pack, I'm going to get like, it doesn't translate.
At some point in my head, I was thinking, oh, if I lose weight, then someone's going to love me, you know?
Yeah.
Well, no, you have to like love your, I mean, it's so cliche. You have to love yourself first, but it's so true. Like, you have to be secure within yourself and who you are in order to attract the right person. And I was attracting all the wrong people because I was just putting out there like, here's my shell, isn't it great? And that's all I was attracting, was people who wanted shells, you know.
Well, I think there's a couple of interesting points I want to unpack with you, Kim. You know, first, so I think that in health and fitness, you know, as we get into better shape, I personally believe there's nothing wrong with wanting to look better. I don't think that there's anything wrong with that because I think beauty and aesthetic is just around us everywhere, right? I mean, we go to beautiful places. We never say, oh, I want to go to this place because it's ugly on vacation, right? We go to the most beautiful places. So I think beauty and aesthetic is there. But to the point that you were making earlier, is sometimes we misplace the value. We think that, okay, as Miles was saying, if I get my 6-pack, then I'm going to be loved. Well, that's not really the case. I mean, if we want beauty for beauty's sake, if we want aesthetic for aesthetic's sake, if we want to accomplish something for the sake of accomplishing it, for the pride, whatever we're going after, that's one piece. So I think that there's something to be said for going after beauty for the sake of beauty. But then also understanding that if there's something deeper under the surface, if we want to feel loved, if we want to feel accepted, we have to separate those things, right? We have to say, okay, I'm doing this for myself. I'm doing this so that I can build self-respect. I'm doing this so I can have more self-love. I'm doing this so that I can feel more beautiful. Nothing wrong with that. But if I want love, I have to do other things, right? I have to, like you said, love myself. Yeah, I have to put out into the world who I am and, let that be. I think there's another important piece to this as well, because you referenced getting into a marriage. I hate to say later in life, because I don't think that that's later. I think in Utah that seems later, but it's very common for people in their late 20s, early 30s. Late 20s, early 30s is very common for people to get married, and being a virgin and then experiencing the physical and the sexual at that stage of life. I do think there's something to be said. As soon as you get into an intimate relationship, you now have sexual needs. You have intimate needs. It's different. When that happens, your life doesn't go backwards. You don't stop having these physical and sexual needs. It doesn't go away. I mean, when you're a kid, you don't have those things, but once you start down that path, you do have those needs. And I think that that's an important thing that we recognize, that sometimes we may lean into that a little bit and say, all right, I have these physical needs, I have these sexual needs. That's an important part of emotional intelligence, is understanding those things, but then also knowing, again, what those things aren't. It's not love, it's affection, it's touch, it's many beautiful things, right? It's a confluence of energy that it's a coming together in a spiritual way, if it's done, from that deep connection state. But it's not necessarily a bad thing. But again, if the intent or something else is put into it, where I'm just going after that and I'm doing that so that I can get love, then we're probably going to miss the mark. So I think you bring up several great points where you may have been looking for attention and validation because of the hard work you were doing. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But then saying, but I also want love. And maybe when you said, maybe I went a little too far. I mean, I'm not here to judge you, whether you did or you didn't. I don't know. I don't know that it matters either, because where you're at right now is a great spot, right? I think it's wonderful. And I think that's part of how we find our path in life, is we start to put ourselves out there, and we start to get to the point where we understand ourselves better. We understand our voice. Now, eventually, you found a man who I just love to death. I mean, I think he's such a great guy. And you reference that in your bio. He's a wonderful man. As you became more authentic, that seemed to be an easy attraction, is the way I perceived it. Am I reading that right?
Yeah. And that's, and that's the thing is, as I've talked to Eddie about it, the thing we've said is it doesn't matter, because the journeys that we've both been through have led us to each other. And so
right,
it's not a matter of judging of, that was wrong or that was right, but this was my journey, and this was what led me to finding him and him finding me.
Yep.
And that was, and I've often said, I wish we had met each other earlier in life. Well, we had to go through our respective journeys to be prepared for each other at this time in our lives. We wouldn't be the people that we are, if we'd met each other 10 years ago, 20 years ago, or whatever. We've had to go through our different journeys to be the people we are now, have met now, and, to be that perfect match for each other. And so, it's fantastic. And, it's not perfect. No marriage is perfect, but I remember coming out of my marriage and just thinking, I have never experienced true love, and I don't think it's ever going to happen for me. Like, I honestly thought I am never going to have experienced true love in my life, and just feeling like kind of this despair over it. And so to now know, this is what it's like, this is what it should be like, and to have that feeling and to know what that's like, it's amazing. And it's it's great. And I had to go through all the things that I went through to get there.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, that's part of the path that gets you to the point where you, I think that's part of where the connection is, right? I mean, I think about the friendship that you and I have. We met at a company that I jokingly to my family now refer to it as probably the worst company that I've ever seen with how it was managed. But yet that company and the experience that I have had, I guess I still have with it, brought me a lot of great people in my life. I mean, many other people. And so I think that there's this, right. Yeah. You and Miles now. So I think that the challenges, the paths in life, I mean, they bring us wonderful people. I want to go back, Kim, to talk a little bit about so you started boxing and then you got a little bit further into it and you got a little bit further into the fitness side. And then you committed fully to saying, okay, I'm going to go after this goal of fighting. And then the weight started to come off even more. What was it that made you decide to make that change? What was it where there was something that clicked that said, okay, I'm going to do this goal, and then you started to see the weight continue to go?
Well, it was actually, so the thing that kind of triggered it was I was working for a company that does like weight loss products, and they said one day we're going to do a contest for any employees that want to participate. And so I was pretty new to the company. And so I'm like, yeah, I should try out their products because I'm going to be writing about them. So I should participate. And so that's kind of how it started, was with this contest. And it was a month-long contest, and I ended up winning it. And I sort of I had a goal the goal in my head was just, I wanted to get below 200 pounds. I'm I just want to be below 200. I don't care. I just want to be below 200 and then I'll be happy. And so I met that goal. And then I just kind of kept going. And then I was like, wow, I don't think I've been this weight since high school. And then when I decided I wanted to do a fight, it's like, okay, what would be my ideal weight for a fight? And, it just sort of was like, I didn't know I could do this. And it was when I realized that I was doing things that I didn't realize I could do, that everything kind of started clicking,
Yeah.
I didn't know I could be this weight again. I didn't know I could develop muscles in my back. I didn't know I could get punched and punch someone. And suddenly I'm doing these things that I didn't know I could do, especially didn't know I could do it in my 40s,
Yeah.
And suddenly there's all these possibilities that you didn't ever know were possibilities before. And it's like, what else can I do? And I remember I was at a fight. One of my coaches was fighting, and it was really fun. And I just thought, I'm going to do this. I'm going to fucking do this. And the next opportunity I get, and it's not easy for someone my age and a woman to find fights, but the next opportunity I get, I'm going to do this. And the opportunity came up, and I was like, yes, I'm going to do this. And it was so the training for it, the prepping for it was far harder than the fight itself. The fight itself was just fucking fun. It was so fun.
So when you can show up and just have
I don't
a
even
great
remember it
time.
that much, honestly. But I remember that the headgear was covering my eyes and I couldn't see, but it was so fun.
Kim, you bring up something really interesting. There's one of the things that I've found in watching people evolve over the years is that there is a point where you do something that you didn't think you could do. And maybe that was, you look in the mirror and you see a different muscle that was there, or you lift a heavier weight or whatever it is, right? You challenged yourself and then you said, oh shit, Well, what now? And that what now point is the curiosity. I call it the curiosity turning point, because when you go from, okay, this is the story I used to tell myself. Now that I've eradicated and blown away that bullshit story, what
Yeah.
now? And when you
Yeah.
reach that point, it's almost like it doesn't stop from there, because once you become curious, you're no longer judgmental. Once you're curious, you're no longer living in that state of telling yourself this bullshit story. And you were so eloquent in the way that you put that you did a couple of things. Then you said, holy shit, I didn't know I could do that, but what if I did this?
Mm-hmm.
And that is powerful. That is unleashing the beast from within, right? That's where the aggressive Kim comes out. I absolutely love that.
Yeah. I didn't know I could get up at 4:25 in the morning so that I could get to a 5:30 workout that's, 30 minutes away. But I do that on the regular. Well, I did. I do it on the semi-regular now.
I know you're in transition
another
with
part
your
of the story.
and we'll get to that in just a second, because I know you're in transition with the gym that you're going to go to a new gym. But 4:20 in the morning, right? Getting up early, doing these workouts. It was much harder than what you initially had committed to doing, but you just said, hey, I'm going to commit to doing the fight. And then it's almost like it doesn't matter what it takes to get there. You're going to get there because you're already committed to that goal. And it's that commitment and curiosity, I think, that drives us forward. You kept on that. You went and you did your fight and you got done with the fight. And then this is now a lifestyle. But like all lifestyles, the gravity of the past can still have some pull on us. And I know that that's something that you have been dealing with lately. And in fact, as we have gone back and forth and talked about having you on the podcast, you said, hey, I want to be, give my story, and I want to be inspirational, but at the same time, I want to be authentic. And that's why I said, that's why we need to have you on, because I love the fact that right now you're not in your ultimate state, right? You're not feeling 100% on. And that's part of why I wanted to talk to you today, because I think that that's a normal state. Most people wake up and they say, well, yeah, I achieved that one goal, and, now I'm a little bit off of it, and God, what's my next thing, or what's my next step? And maybe work gets a little bit hard. Maybe the relationship gets a little bit tougher, but God, that's life, right? So talk a little bit about where you're at right now and what has led you to this, to this current state.
I'm struggling right now. I'm tired. My nutrition has not been great, which is probably part of the reason why I'm tired. And I'm, as you've mentioned, I'm kind of between gyms right now. And so it's been really, really hard. And poor Eddie, I have literally cried to him on several occasions about the fact that I'm struggling so hard. And he's so sweet because he'll just let me cry. And I'm literally crying about a gym right now. Because I don't have a place to go right now. Part of what made this journey for me so great was that I had a gym that was really a community for me, where I had friends, where I had people that I really counted on, and were just kind of like a second family. My boxing gym was like my second home.
Yeah.
And
becomes your tribe. That's who helps you stay solid, right? Yeah.
Yeah. And that, for reasons I won't go into, that just kind of has, in the last couple months, has really broken down and sort of left me a little homeless as far as boxing goes. And I live in Morgan, and there's not really a lot out here. And I would travel to Bountiful, every morning, which is a 30 to 35 minute drive. And I didn't mind doing that because it's important to me. That's, I'm dedicated to doing that. And so I've been struggling with that, with not having the people, the tribe, the consistency. I'm someone that like really likes the consistency of this is what I do every day. You know, I get up in the morning, I go do this workout, I eat these foods, you know, and it was interesting after my fight. You know, I had been going to boxing classes, I had been sparring, I had been hitting the treadmill, and I'd been working so hard for 2 or 3 months before my fight. And then after the fight, I was like, okay, I'm gonna, you know, take a little break from sparring, and that little break from sparring has turned into like a 1.5 year break. Like, and I have not been able to like get myself back into the ring. And it's been, and I don't know, I think I've sparred like twice since I had my fight. And I don't know like why, because like I said, the fight was fun. I didn't get injured in it. It was really good. The woman I fought, like, I love her. We talk all the time. It was a great experience, but getting back into the ring has been really hard. Working out as hard has been difficult. Like, I just don't have the energy. My nutrition has the last couple of weeks I've been working really hard on kind of upping my nutrition, but I've just struggled. And I feel like people think, especially when they see you on social media, and they just think, oh, she lost this weight, she does this all the time, like whatever, she's fine, she's got it figured out. I'm like, no, like, it's hard. It's really hard. Like, I am terrified of gaining back weight. Like, I can't even express that enough. And I try not to be crazy about it. I try not to jump on the scale like every single day, but I do check. And when you've been 320 pounds and you like, the thought of getting back there, because even after I had that surgery and I saw 5 pounds come back on, and then 10 pounds, and then it was 20 pounds, you know, and it's like, at what point does it become unmanageable to lose that, you know?
Yeah.
And I'm still carrying like the 10 pounds that I gained during COVID. And I'm like, okay, that's all right. It was just 10 pounds. But then it's like, what if I put on another 5 pounds and then another 5 pounds? You know, it's like at some point it starts to become, you start to feel like it's becoming unmanageable to like lose that weight, you know, and then you're back where you were. And it's a terrifying feeling. It brings up so much anxiety. And I just think, if I'm not working out, you know, 5-6 times a week, I'm going to gain that weight back. And that's how I feel all the time, you know? And I feel like I can't relax.
Yeah.
Can I ask you a question? Can I?
Yeah.
Because there's some things going, like, really running through my head. I forgot who it was. It might have been Patrick Mahomes or a podcast I was listening to with these athletes. And they really gave us some insight into what athletes go through. You know, we think of athletes training all year round, and they were talking about the rookies that come into camp. You know, they go through their camp, they go play, and when the season is over, it's really anticlimactic, and it's up to each individual athlete to find his way to keep his momentum.
Yeah.
And the great athletes know how to cycle on and off. And I keep hearing, to a degree, it sounds like you went through an athletic cycle.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, you train and train and train to get in the ring. You get in the ring, you box. And then there's that lull. It's over. It's literally over.
Yeah.
And it's like your body needs to take a break and come down. And if you don't see yourself as an athlete, you can really freak out when you're on that downward spiral. But as an athlete, you kind of accept the downward spiral because you know at a certain point you got to get back on the horse and do that again. And so my question to you is, are you seeing yourself as an athlete?
No, I don't see myself as an athlete.
So that there's the possibility
shift.
that if you saw yourself as an athlete, this lull would be the natural course of things until, say, like 6 months from now, or just say now you're starting to work on little tiny things, building your momentum to have another fight.
Yeah.
But if you don't see yourself as an athlete, then it's kind of like, I'm spiraling out of control, man.
Yeah. And that's the thing. I'm trying to figure out, like, what are my next steps? Like, do I want, because at first I was like, yeah, I'm going to do another fight. And now I'm like, do I want to do another fight? I think I do. Do I? I don't know. Like, and now I'm like, I don't know what I want to do. I just feel like I'm like, am I an athlete or am I just a middle-aged woman who's trying not to get fat again?
But those are important questions. And I, part of the reason why I wanted to have this conversation, Kim, is it's not, I mean, I hate to minimize and say it's not unique, but it's not unique. This is something that everybody goes through, right? Because, and I've seen this over the years, as to Miles' point, if you view yourself as an athlete, then you have to have your on times, your off times, right? I've seen people that, I mean, you look at a lot of professional athletes, once they are finished with their careers, a lot of those guys put on a lot of weight afterwards, because when they were a professional athlete, they knew how to go on and then off. And, you know, you read about Kobe Bryant in particular and how he would go all in for a few months out of the year, and then he would kind of maintain. So I think that if people have this mindset of, okay, I'm an athlete, I'm choosing that, right? I'm choosing to be an athlete. Then there's going to be some times where you're more on than you are off. Then there's the other piece. And the other piece is the lifestyle piece. So to your question, am I an athlete, or am I just a middle-aged woman that wants to not gain weight and wants to be healthy? I think that's a great question too, because wherever we define ourselves, if we define ourselves as an athlete, then that means that we're going to have some cycles and some ups and downs, and that's okay. But then there's the lifestyle piece that fits into it. And so what is my lifestyle? I think one of the things I've observed with you and your lifestyle and just how you're wired, you're very tribal in nature. You're very gregarious, you're very outgoing, you attract a lot of people to you. I remember the company that we worked at together, there was the group messaging app thing that we would be on, and you put together the fitness tribe, and that was just this point of positivity. But then there was also this point of positivity around the desk where you would sit, where the boxing gloves were, and people would come over, and we ended up hanging a punching bag over by where we sat, right? Because you built the tribe around you. And so I think there's three important lessons for our listeners. Number one, if you define yourself as an athlete, you have to understand what your on and off cycles are. You got to clearly define those things. If you decide that you don't want to be an athlete, that's okay too. If you just want to live a good, healthy lifestyle, right? It's all goal related, whatever it is that you're going for. Hey, I don't want to put on more weight, or hey, I want to be this type of person. I think those two things are super important. Athlete, lifestyle, you got to define that. The third piece that I want to unpack for our listeners is that you've got to identify how you're wired. Now, see, I'm not like you where I want a tribe of people around me working out. I tend to do more of that on my own. I'm a guy where I love the tribe around me in business. I love the tribe with me in personal life. And, you know, I want my group and my tribe that way. But when it comes to fitness, like, I'm not wired that way. So I just don't do it. You are. And so I think that's one of the reasons why the, boxing gym change, it has rocked you. And I just bring that up because I know that there are people out here that are listening to this right now, whether they're working out or driving in their car to work, that feel the same way. And I want them to recognize that this is normal. And so you have to ask these questions that Kim is asking herself, because you are in this really cool state. I know it probably doesn't feel like a cool state, but it is a cool state of your evolution that 6 months from now, you're going to look back on and say, oh yeah, that was cool. I actually got deep and understood who I was. You're a writer. You're a very good writer. And when you're a writer in marketing, you have to identify who your ideal customer is, right? Your ICP. Who's my ideal customer persona, or what's my ideal customer profile? That's what you're doing right now. You're identifying what your persona, your archetype is. You're digging deep to figure out, okay, am I an athlete or am I not? Okay, well, where do I show up? Oh, I show up in tribe. Okay, so tribe matters. It's a cool spot to be in, right? It doesn't feel like a cool spot.
Interesting, because I didn't realize that about myself.
Yeah.
Say that, and I'm always saying to Eddie, like, come to boxing with me. And he's like, no, I don't want to go. I don't want to go. I don't like doing that group class stuff,
Yeah.
And that makes sense because that's not his thing. But yeah, having the tribe, that is a big part of my motivation, because I knew if I went to that 5:30 class, I was going to have people that I really like there as well.
Yeah.
And that we were all going to do it together. And that would be part of my motivation to work hard and to do my best.
Yeah. And you take the pictures because the tribe's there, and because it's an accountability, and because it's something that, that's part of your way of cementing the fact that you guys were there together, right? It's not hey, look at me, check out my ass, and, go pay for my feet pics on Feet Finder. Like you're doing this because that's innate in you. It's part of your tribal nature.
And having a really
I think that's an important part.
A really good coach, that you want to work hard for. That's a big part of it too.
Let's talk about this. Part of what I love about this conversation is you're in the midst of the battle right now, right? We're kind of hitting pause partway through your fight. And we're saying, hey, come over to the sidelines and tell us. You're getting punched in the face. What does it feel like, right? We're having the conversation on the sideline while you're fighting. What are you doing to stay tough and stay resilient? Because I know you're down on yourself and you're kind of downplaying and saying, well, I'm not doing very good, but you're doing things. So what are you doing to stay tough and stay resilient?
I don't know. And Miles is making me smile and happy right now, but Steve, that on the phone with you a couple of weeks ago, I was like bawling my eyes out.
Yeah.
And honestly, like I cry on the regular. I'm not sure how to answer that question.
Well, I think you just did.
I'm trying to.
You cry, you open yourself up. Isn't that tough? Right?
I cry.
We live in a homogenized world. People don't open up emotionally. You're opening up emotionally. Like the conversation you and I had a couple of weeks ago was fucking awesome. Because you just open up, right? That's tough.
Yeah. And I feel bad for Eddie because he's not a real emoting person, but
sure.
I actually told him, I think the last time, because he wants to fix everything. And I said, I don't need you to fix it. Like, this isn't something you can fix. I just need you to if I start to cry, just be there for me. That's all I need.
Yeah.
I just literally need a shoulder to cry on because this isn't something that's fixable right now.
That's tough though, Kim.
I'm frustrated.
That's resilient.
Yeah, I'm frustrated. I have anxiety about this. I feel like I'm not doing enough right now. And there's not a fucking thing I can do about it right now. Like, this is just the situation I'm in. I've been trying to make it to just the regular old gym. But I'm not super motivated. Like, I go and I do the treadmill and I do some weights and stuff like that. But like you said, I'm like you. It's so funny because I didn't identify that about myself. But yeah, it's not tribal for me. And so to go there and just be there by myself and not know anybody, it's not highly motivating for me to do. And so I've been having a really hard time getting my butt out of bed and going and doing it. But I'm trying to because I know that it's good for me to get up in the morning, to move my body, to like, I'm like, man, I worked so hard on like all the boxing with moving, your shoulders and your arms and your back. Like, I don't want to get back into boxing and be totally like, oh, I can't do it because I haven't done it for like the last 2 months or whatever. So I'm trying to do those things just to like keep me somewhat in shape, you know. And I know, like, in my head, I know that I can't like lose everything I've worked for the past 4 years or whatever in 8 weeks. In my head, like, I know that.
Yeah.
Emotionally, I don't know that. And so that's where it's hard, because
Sure.
I have anxiety about it. I panic about it. I beat myself up about it. And I'm honestly, right now, I'm just trying to endure. I'm trying to endure until March 1st, when the new boxing gym opens, and it sucks.
Yeah. But I think that's part of what makes you tough, is you're not sugarcoating, and you're sticking with it, and you're open, and you're emotional.
And I'm really trying to like eat better. I've been really trying to like watch how much, because sugar is my big thing. Like I eat way too much sugar. And so I've been working really hard just to watch my sugar intake. I'm not perfect, absolutely not perfect, but I've been doing better. You know, the last few weeks I've been doing better, and that's, you know, it's good.
Yeah.
So
good for you. And I got to say, I mean, I'm going to throw it out there. I think karma comes back. I think 6 months from now, you're probably going to run into somebody that's going through the same shit that you're going through right now. You're going to be in a different spot. You're going to look at them and say, oh yeah, I was a hell of a lot more resilient than I gave myself credit for. Just stick with it. And you're going to be able to have that conversation with them.
I hope so. You know,
or you're going to be laying down in a ring after getting knocked out, smiling.
Yes. That might even be better.
That would be awesome, Miles.
Yeah.
You coming to Utah anytime soon?
I keep talking to my Utah folks, telling them the minute I feel like I'm cleared with this hip, I think the first thing I'm going to do is get on a plane and go to Utah.
Yes.
Yeah, I love it.
I could use some Miles coaching.
Amen to that. Well, Kim, we're coming up on our time. I just want to, a couple more questions for you. We've talked a lot about your personal evolution and, what you've done, what you've been through. If you could go back 10 years ago, or go back 10 years in time, give yourself advice that would push your evolution forward, what would you say to yourself 10 years ago?
Oh, man. I think it would just be, you're way more capable than you know, like you have no idea how strong your body is and the things that it can do if you just let it. I think I just had no idea. I'd always kind of grown up thinking that that I just wasn't, I grew up thinking I just wasn't very athletic, and I, just kind of was always kind of overweight, and I just wasn't really gifted in that area. And I say, when I see women come into the boxing gym now and they look a little intimidated, or maybe they're a little overweight or something, I make sure to talk to them and say, hey, like, I didn't start here. Because I think sometimes when we see people in a gym, we assume, especially if they're really fit or something, we assume they've always been that way.
Yeah.
So I say, I didn't start here. This is, I worked to get here, and I didn't think I could get here. Or when I see younger girls coming boxing, I'm like, I'm so glad you're here. I wish I had found this when I was a teenager or when I was in my 20s. But I had no idea of what I was capable of then. And so I think if I the advice I would give myself is just, you're capable of so much more than you know of.
Beautiful advice. And I love how you're paying that forward to other people too.
Steve, before you get to your next question, I want to add something to this question, because we ask this question a lot. What would the 80-year-old Kim tell the current day Kim?
Oh, great question. Great question.
Thanks for all those awesome tattoos.
That is great. There's nothing better than a badass 80-year-old with a lot of tattoos. Well, Kim Hartman, you are.
For your husband.
Yes. You are an inspiration, not only to me, but to many others I know. And this episode, I think, is going to speak to a lot of people and help a lot of people make some changes, because you've made some great changes and you're in the midst of the fight right now. So appreciate you coming on and being open and vulnerable and sharing your story with our listeners.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
And on that note, folks, it is time for us to wrap up another episode of the Evolve Podcast. I want to thank our guest, Kim Hartman, and my co-host, W. Miles Riley. Kim, as people want to get more information and inspiration from you, what's the best way where people can follow you and follow your personal evolution?
Oh, well, I'm on Instagram at Kim A. Hart, or Facebook, Kimberly Hartman.
Awesome.
H-A-R-T.
And we will put that in the show notes. You've got a great story, and I would love for people to be able to follow what you're doing and see your continued evolution. And hey, folks, remember that it does take time and consistency to evolve, but first you have to disrupt. And now it's time for you to get out there and evolve.
And evolve.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Evolve Podcast. Follow us on your favorite podcast app, and if you haven't done so, please give us a rating. As an independent podcast, it really helps us get more reach. This podcast is part of our mission to help millions of people evolve into the best versions of themselves. Please check out our coaching services at evolve-cast.com or pick up some of our Evolve merch. Until next time, keep evolving.